HFY Stories, Leani's Ranger, Volume 1. A magic-armed ranger. The first thing Leani noticed about the human wasn't his size or strange appearance, it was his calm. He stood in the chaos of battle like a force of nature, unmoving, as the enemy horde thundered toward him. In one hand, he held a strange staff-like weapon, sleek and metallic. In the other, he carried what looked like a shield, though it shimmered faintly with the same kind of glow that accompanied high-tier magical artifacts. But he wasn't a mage. Leani, a royal scholar and daughter of the High Queen of Elenther, had spent her life cataloging magic and its wielders. Humans, she had learned, were mundane beings from a distant realm, non-magical but inventive. Yet here was this human, armed with tools that glowed, boomed, and cut through the magical hordes of the voidspawn like they were paper. And he was hers. 1 month earlier. Leani sighed as she flipped through her mother's decree. A desperate war against the voidspawn, endless battles across the fractured kingdoms of their world, and the royal court's solution was, summoning magic? Mother, this is madness, she had argued. We cannot summon a warrior from an unknown realm. What if it fails? Or worse, what if the being we summon turns against us? The High Queen had fixed her with an unyielding gaze. Would you rather surrender the realm, child? Summon a hero, or watch Elenther burn? And so, the ritual had begun. Leani had gathered the magical components, carved the runes, and spoken the incantations. The circle had blazed with power, and a towering figure had appeared. The human. Leani's first impression of him was underwhelming. Dressed in rugged, dirt-streaked clothes, he carried a bag slung over one shoulder and appeared disoriented. His name was Alex Carter, a ranger from Earth. His initial confusion had given way to wariness as he absorbed the situation, summoned to a world of magic, tasked with protecting it from unimaginable horrors. But Alex wasn't unarmed. His pack contained tools and weapons from his world, a modern rifle, a sidearm, survival gear, and a tactical drone. When Leani explained their plight, his expression hardened, not with fear, but with determination. Your people need a ranger, he had said, and I just happen to be one. Now. The battlefield was a slaughter, but not in the way Leani had feared. Alex's rifle barked fire, each shot precise and deadly. His enchanted ammunition, imbued with runes by Leani herself, pierced even the thick carapaces of the voidspawn. His drone, now powered by a fusion of human tech and Elentherian magic, scanned the battlefield and relayed information directly to him, allowing him to command like a general. Leani watched from behind the shield wall of Elenther's knights, unable to tear her eyes from the human warrior. He moved like a predator, conserving his energy, always 2 steps ahead of the voidspawn's frenzied attacks. Leani. Alex's voice cut through her reverie. He gestured for her to join him, his tone sharp. I need another mana crystal, now. She scrambled to his side, handing him a glowing blue shard. He snapped it into a compartment on his rifle, which flared with renewed energy. These things are worse than the last batch, he muttered, adjusting his stance. They're adapting, Leani replied, her voice tinged with worry. The voidspawn evolve quickly. Our magic has never been enough to counter them for long. Alex smirked, his confidence infuriating but oddly reassuring. Good thing I'm not just using magic. He raised the rifle, the runes along its barrel glowing as he fired. The shot exploded mid-air, showering the oncoming horde with a cascade of shrapnel and arcane fire. The voidspawn screamed and fell back, their charge momentarily broken. Leani's heart raced as she realized something. Alex wasn't just a warrior. He was a bridge between 2 worlds, combining humanity's ingenuity with Elenther's magic. After the battle. The aftermath of the fight was grim but victorious. The voidspawn retreated, their numbers thinned, though Leani knew they would return. Alex sat by the campfire, cleaning his rifle. The once pristine weapon was now covered in scratches and glowing with faint magical inscriptions, runes Leani had carved herself. You're quiet, Alex said, glancing at her. Leani sat across from him, pulling her cloak tighter against the night's chill. I was just thinking. You're unlike anything I've ever studied. That a compliment or an insult? He asked with a grin. A compliment, she admitted. You adapt so quickly. Most warriors would struggle to understand even basic magic, yet you've combined it with your weapons like it's second nature. Alex shrugged. Back on Earth, we adapt or die. Seems like that's true here too. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at her. Do you regret being summoned here? Fighting our war? Alex paused, his expression softening. I miss my home. But if I wasn't here, who would stop those things? He gestured toward the battlefield. I've been given the tools to make a difference. That's all any ranger needs. Leani smiled faintly. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope. Rest, she said. Tomorrow, we begin the counteroffensive. Alex nodded, leaning back against a log. As the fire crackled, Leani allowed herself a rare moment of peace. With Alex by her side, she dared to believe that they could turn the tide of the war. But deep down, she knew the Voidspawn's masters would not sit idly by. The war was far from over, and Alex Carter, the magic-armed ranger, would face challenges even greater than the Voidspawn. Would you like to see what happens next, or explore another part of this story? #HFY Stories, Leani's Ranger, Volume 1 A Magic-Armed Ranger, Part 2. The Elentharian forces marched east at dawn, the horizon painted in fiery hues as the twin suns rose over the jagged peaks of the Valespire Mountains. Their goal was ambitious, to reclaim Fort Yaldris, a strategic stronghold that had fallen to the Voidspawn months ago. Alex Carter walked near the front of the column, his rifle slung over his shoulder and his enchanted drone hovering quietly at his side. Behind him marched knights in gleaming armor, their swords and shields enchanted with defensive spells. Alex had quickly learned to respect these warriors. While they lacked his technological precision, their unflinching courage in the face of danger was undeniable. Leani rode beside him on a shimmering steed, her ornate staff resting across her saddle. She had insisted on joining him for this mission, her scholar's mind determined to study the interplay between magic and Alex's technology in a live combat scenario. "You've been quiet," Alex remarked, glancing up at her. Leani sighed. "I'm worried. Fort Yaldris isn't just a fortress, it's a ley line convergence point. If the Voidspawn have entrenched themselves there, they'll be feeding on the ley line's magic, growing stronger by the day." Alex adjusted the strap on his rifle. "Stronger how? Bigger? Smarter?" "Both," Leani replied grimly, "and if they've had time to corrupt the ley line, their influence could spread across the entire region." "Great," Alex muttered, "so we're walking into a magical hornet's nest." #The approach. By midday, the fortress came into view. Perched atop a rocky plateau, Fort Yaldris loomed like a haunted relic of a bygone era. Its once proud walls were now cracked and overgrown with blackened vines that pulsed faintly with otherworldly energy. Through his binoculars, Alex surveyed the stronghold. The gates were broken, and strange figures moved within, hulking Voidspawn brutes, their carapaces shimmering with leyline-infused energy. "Leani," Alex said, lowering the binoculars, "they've definitely dug in. There's no sneaking past them." Leani studied the fortress with narrowed eyes. "We'll need a diversion. If we can draw their attention to the gates, a small team could infiltrate through the collapsed section of the wall on the western side." Alex smirked. "Let me guess, you want me to be the small team?" "You are our best infiltrator," she admitted, "and you'll have me with you." He raised an eyebrow. "I thought scholars weren't big on sneaking around in war zones." Leani gave him a wry smile. "I'm not just a scholar, Alex, I'm also a mage." #The plan. As the knights prepared their diversion, Alex and Leani made their way toward the western wall. Leani carried a small satchel filled with enchanted crystals, each one pulsing with stored energy. Alex, meanwhile, double-checked his gear, ensuring his weapons were ready for whatever horrors awaited them inside. "Tell me about the ley line," Alex said as they crept through the underbrush. "It's a natural river of magical energy," Leani explained. "When concentrated, it can be used to power spells, enchantments, or even large-scale rituals, but if corrupted by the Voidspawn, it turns into a death factory," Alex finished grimly. "Exactly." As they neared the wall, the faint hum of corrupted magic grew louder. Alex's drone scanned ahead, relaying the layout of the fortress directly to his visor. "There's a patrol coming up," he whispered. Leani nodded, gripping her staff. "Leave them to me." Before Alex could protest, she stepped forward, her staff glowing with ethereal light. She whispered an incantation, and vines erupted from the ground, ensnaring the patrol of Voidspawn brutes. The creatures thrashed and roared, but the enchanted vines held fast. "Not bad," Alex said, impressed. Leani smirked. "You're not the only one who can innovate." Inside the fortress. The air inside Fort Yaldris was thick with corruption. Blackened veins of void-tainted energy snaked along the walls, pulsating like a heartbeat. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. Alex's rifle was at the ready, the runes along its barrel glowing faintly. Leani walked close behind him, her staff crackling with magical energy. Suddenly, his drone emitted a soft warning beep. "Movement ahead," Alex whispered. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a Voidspawn monstrosity. It was larger than anything Alex had seen before, its body a grotesque amalgamation of flesh, chitin, and corrupted magic. Its eyes burned with an unnatural light as it roared, shaking the very stones of the fortress. "Run or fight?" Alex asked, his rifle already aimed. "Fight," Leani said, raising her staff. The battle was chaotic and brutal. Alex's rifle barked fire, each shot tearing chunks out of the creature's armor like hide. Leani chanted a spell, summoning a storm of glowing shards that rained down on the monstrosity. piercing its flesh. But the creature was relentless, swiping at them with massive claws and unleashing bursts of corrupted energy. Leani, now would be a good time for one of those crystals, Alex shouted, dodging a claw swipe. Leani pulled a crystal from her satchel and hurled it at the creature. The crystal exploded on impact, releasing a wave of pure, cleansing magic. The void spawn shrieked in agony, its form dissolving into ash. Alex lowered his rifle, breathing heavily. That thing was a walking nightmare. And there are likely more, Leani said, her voice steady despite the strain in her expression. Great. Let's find this ley line and shut it down before we meet its siblings. ##### The heart of corruption. They reached the ley line chamber at the center of the fortress. The sight was both awe-inspiring and horrifying. The ley line's energy, once vibrant and golden, was now a seething mass of black and red, pulsing like an open wound. Tendrils of corrupted magic lashed out, filling the air with a malevolent hum. Leani stepped forward, her staff glowing. I can cleanse it, but I'll need time. You'll get it, Alex said, taking position at the entrance. As Leani began her incantation, the void spawn desk //. ###HFY Stories, Leani's Ranger, Volume 1 A Magic-Armed Ranger, Part 3. The journey back from Fort Yaldris was a quiet one. Though the victory was undeniable, the weight of what they had witnessed hung heavily over the returning forces. Leani rode in silence, her thoughts consumed by the corrupted ley line and the void spawn's growing strength. Alex, walking beside her mount, carried his rifle casually, though his sharp eyes scanned the horizon for any sign of danger. Despite the triumph, the void spawn's relentless adaptation gnawed at his mind. They had pushed the enemy back today, but this war wasn't about individual victories, it was about survival, and Alex knew it was far from over. #### The Council's response. Upon their return to the capital city of Veranther, the High Queen herself summoned Alex and Leani to the Royal Council chamber. The room was filled with tension as advisors, generals, and mages debated the next course of action. Your Majesty, one of the generals began, while the reclamation of Fort Yaldris is commendable, the void spawn will surely retaliate. We need to fortify the ley line and prepare for the worst. Another advisor countered, fortification will only delay the inevitable. We must strike at the void spawn's origin, their rift. Enough, the High Queen said, silencing the room with a raised hand. She turned her gaze to Alex and Leani. You've been at the heart of this war. What do you recommend? Leani hesitated, glancing at Alex. He stepped forward, his voice steady and firm. Your Majesty, Fort Yaldris was a victory, but the void spawn are evolving faster than we can adapt. Their corruption of the ley line was a tactical move, not just a mindless invasion. Whoever, or whatever, is behind this is playing a long game. What are you suggesting, human? One of the mages asked, his tone skeptical. That we take the fight to them, Alex said. We've been reacting to their moves, but we need to get proactive. I've seen enough battles to know that if we keep playing defense, we'll lose. The council murmured, some nodding in agreement while others exchanged uneasy glances. The High Queen studied Alex intently. And what would you propose, Ranger? Alex met her gaze. You have a team of brilliant scholars, warriors, and mages. Combine that with my world's tactics and technology, and we can start disrupting their supply lines, destroying their rift portals, and maybe even figure out how to shut down their connection to this world entirely. Leani stepped forward, her voice calm but resolute. Your Majesty, Alex is right. We've seen firsthand how effective his methods are. If we can arm more of our forces with his tools, enhanced with our magic, we'll stand a far better chance. The High Queen leaned back in her throne, considering their words. Finally, she nodded. Very well, you will have the resources you need, but I expect results, Ranger. You'll get them, Alex promised. #### Building the Alliance. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Alex worked closely with Leani and her team of enchanters to retrofit his weapons and gear with magical enhancements. Together, they created hybrid weapons that combined the precision of human engineering with the raw power of Elentharian magic. Leani's scholars studied Alex's drone, replicating its design and integrating it into their spellwork. Soon, the Elentharian forces were equipped with floating sentinels capable of reconnaissance, shield projection, and even offensive spells. Meanwhile, Alex trained squads of knights and mages in Earth's combat tactics. He taught them how to move as a unit, how to adapt on the fly, and how to think like hunters rather than prey. Leani watched the transformation with a mixture of pride and awe. Alex's influence was reshaping their army, turning them into something far more formidable. But Alex wasn't satisfied. #### The Rift Expedition. 3 months after reclaiming Fort Yaldris, Alex and Leani led an expedition to the southern wastelands, where the largest known rift to the void spawn's dimension was located. The journey was perilous, the terrain twisted by years of void corruption. Their force was small but elite, a mix of human-trained knights, mages wielding hybrid weaponry, and scouts equipped with enchanted drones. As they approached the rift, the air grew heavy with dark energy. The rift itself was a swirling vortex of black and crimson, tendrils of void magic snaking out into the surrounding landscape. "Looks like we found their front door," Alex muttered, scanning the area with his rifle. Leani nodded grimly, "And it's heavily guarded." Void spawn of every shape and size patrolled the area, their numbers far greater than anything they had faced before. Alex turned to the group. "Here's the plan. We split into 3 teams. Team 1 creates a diversion to the east, Team 2 secures the western ridge for sniper support, and Team 3, us, goes straight for the rift." The knights and mages nodded, their expressions determined. #### into the rift. The battle was chaotic. Explosions lit up the wasteland as Team 1 engaged the voidspawn horde. Meanwhile, Team 2 rained down precise magical attacks from the ridge, clearing a path for Alex and Leani's team. As they reached the rift, Leani began her spell work, her staff glowing as she channeled energy into a containment crystal. "Keep them off me," she shouted over the din of battle. Alex didn't need to be told twice. His rifle barked fire, cutting down any voidspawn that dared approach. His drone zipped through the air, projecting shields to protect Leani and firing bursts of energy at incoming threats. But the voidspawn weren't giving up easily. A massive brute charged toward them, its claws glowing with corrupted magic. Alex sprinted forward, drawing his combat knife. The blade, enchanted by Leani herself, flared with blue light as he plunged it into the creature's chest. The brute roared and collapsed, its form dissolving into ash. "Almost there," Leani shouted, her voice strained. The rift pulsed violently, as if aware of their efforts to close it. The ground beneath them trembled, and dark tendrils lashed out, trying to disrupt Leani's spell.